All right, you ready?
Sure.
All right. Today is Wednesday, July 8th, also known as the day that will live in cyber infamy.
The day the cybers died.
2015, and this is episode 122 of the Defensive Security Podcast. My name is Jerry Bell, and joining me tonight, as always, is Mr. Andrew Callett.
Hi, Jerry. How are you?
I'm good. How's your 401k doing today?
I'm in it for the long haul. I just look at the future. I look at it. The stock market is on sale. That's how I look at it.
This is the worst cyber attack in you. Oh, wait.
No.
It actually wasn't a cyber attack, was it?
It was kind of like when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor.
Yes, that's right.
Kind of.
Kind of just like that.
Yeah, it's been a crazy day. And
yep.
Though the speculation, right? So we're talking about, in case this is like weeks from now and you hear this. First of all, United went down. United Airlines, all their flights got canceled. Complete ground stop for some automation problem, and apparently their booking site was also down. I was trying to figure out what sort of correlation between their booking site and their flight dispatch systems somehow. I mean, I don't know about their architecture at all, but wow, that's a lot of... You would think those two systems probably didn't really touch each other much, but
their public statement, at least as of midday, was that it was a router problem, which I can only assume that the router was hacked through the onboard entertainment system of one of their planes.
Using the Flash Zero Day.
Absolutely.
That's brilliant.
In the galley.
So in addition, the New York Stock Exchange had a hissy fit and said, I'm taking my balls and going home. And just decided to stop trading today.
Yeah, for 4 hours.
And about the same time, the Wall Street Journal went Tango uniform. Now, many people are saying that the Wall Street Journal went Tango uniform because everybody was going to them to see what was going on with the New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah, I would not doubt that logic, actually, because some of the reports I heard was that it was actually up in the West Coast. It was only down in the East Coast.
So they probably have a CDN.
That's what I'm thinking. So that explanation actually makes a lot of sense. So yeah, and as of right now, the speculation, or at least the official word out of the New York Stock Exchange, is that it was some kind of internal IT problem. They're not saying what kind of internal IT problem, although, as I understand it, they actually have to file a report with the SEC about what happened. There was, and continues to be, some scuttle, which I actually contributed to a little bit early on, because a copious number of anonymous Twitter accounts last night tweeted out something to the effect of, "Boy, I hope nothing bad happens to the stock market tomorrow," or something to that effect.
Yeah, I saw that.
And so I was talking with someone. Actually, someone corrected me and said, that tweet was probably in reference to the Chinese stock market crash.
Yeah. That's what I saw as well from a couple of folks. So I think it was purely coincidental, I think, is the key there. But
we like cyber attacks. We want cyber attacks. We want
cyber conspiracy.
We want anonymous.
So we need to somehow combine the word cyber and conspiracy.
Cyberspiracy.
Yeah.
There you go.
Con cyber.
All right.
Con cyber. Crazy Ivan. Anywho. So anyway, all these three things happened today, and it's fascinating to me that now, much like everything was terrorism for a while, now everything is hacking.
Yeah, and you have the you have the parade of politicians trying to use this as a platform to justify their, well, we've got to have our information sharing law passed, and
yeah, meanwhile,
blah,
in
blah,
Congress, they're having hearings about encryption backdoors, which is frightening.
Yeah.
So
Great.
it was definitely a cybery kind of day.
Yep. So
and we're late, right? We should have recorded this like 3 days ago.
oh, we're very late. It was originally my fault, and then it was your fault, and then it was my fault, and whatever.
Yeah.
So anyhow, sorry for being late.
Yeah, but we're here now.
That's right. That's all that counts. We love you all. We love you all.
We do. Well, almost.
Most of you.
There's that one guy.
Yeah, you know who you are.
You do know who you are. Before we go any further, the thoughts and opinion expressed on this show by both Jerry and I, and any potential random guests, cats, dogs, whatever, are purely our opinions and not the opinions of our employers, past, present, or future.
Yes, good.
That's our please don't fire us obligatory statement there.
That's right. And you'll know, kind of like a warrant canary, you'll know when we get tired of our jobs because we're going to stop saying that.
It's true. Or we'll just sell out and take a sponsor.
Oh, or that, yeah. So
and start saying things like, "So, Jerry, have you heard about the latest from Palo Alto? They do great with the cybers."
oh, geez. AVG would have stopped that cold. Oh, my goodness. So, yeah, how about stories?
Yeah, that's why we're here, not to just be silly, right? So it's been a busy week. What would you like to start with, sir?
So let us start with the doubleheader we have on deck from the awesomeness that is the hacking team.
It's a big one. It's a heck of a story.
Yeah. So just for those who are not aware, I suspect many people are, Hacking Team is a quite controversial group. It's been controversial for a number of years for supplying cyber spying tools. Basically, think of it as malware or spyware that is for sale to law enforcement agencies, intelligence agencies, governments, and whatnot. And this company in particular has had some trouble, I guess, because there's a lot of people who really don't like the idea that a company like Hacking Team would provide their tools to oppressive governments to spy on their citizens and that all that stuff. But regardless, they got hacked. All right, and they got hacked in kind of the most spectacular fashion possible, like almost Sony-esque, except without the desktop wiping stuff. So earlier this week, 400 gigabytes of data, which apparently is a subset of a larger amount of data that this hacker somehow came upon, was posted onto BitTorrent and has been downloaded repeatedly. And lots of people have been poking around and finding all sorts of interesting stuff. And that's kind of where I wanted to...
Can I stop you right there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Talk about the irony of privacy advocates happily invading the privacy of the Hacking Team company.
Well,
Because let's not stand on our principles of, I don't believe they should be invading our privacy, so I'm going to invade their privacy. The irony of this is so strong. I'm not saying they're right, wrong, or different, but I'm saying if they're for privacy, why aren't they respecting Hacking Team's privacy?
Well, I mean, I think from their perspective, it's already done. They're not furthering the invasion. They've not hacked Hacking Team. Somebody else did that. Somebody else did the dirty work.
Clearly.
They're just stopping to gawk at the car crash. They didn't cause the crash.
No, they're digging in there to prove their point that Hacking Team is an evil company. But let me just say this before we go any further. I can promise you, I've seen it with my own eyes, many companies sell weaponized malware to many governments, including ours. So you could call our own government oppressive with their monitoring and everything else they're doing. So I'm not saying that these other governments aren't oppressive, but before we throw too many stones at Hacking Team, they are not the only ones doing this.
No, and that, in my view, that's not actually the point. That's kind of a wart on the story, a wart on the story.
So what you're saying is I just wasted time on that point.
Totally.
Yeah, carry on.
Totally. So, kind of a couple of interesting things. What I want to talk about is not the ethics or morality or anything like that, but actually, what this shows and some of the, I think some of the concerns I have that come out of this, and maybe some more of the irony. Like, for instance, in this Ars Technica article, apparently this CEO sent out an email back in June, and there's not a lot of context behind why this email was particularly sent, but I assume it's trying to reinforce the importance of confidentiality. He says, imagine this: a leak on WikiLeaks shows you explaining the evilest technology on Earth. Smiley face. You would be demonized by our dearest friends, the activists, and normal people would point their fingers at you. Boy, that's kind of it reminds me a lot of some of the stuff that we saw at Sony. Where anytime you have your pot of email stolen, you're gonna regret it. It's just bad juju.
Yeah.
So anyhow, there kind of going on. There's been some allegations about child porn, and I don't know enough yet to say one way or the other if that is just coincidental based on some file names and whatnot. But there,
I've seen people on Twitter allege that is taken out of context and is not
okay.
So
I would not be surprised.
Yeah, I don't know either, but I've just seen some people go, "Holy cow! Look at how they're playing child porn." Other people go, "No, you're wrong. That's taken out of context. That's not what that's doing." So I don't know what to think, but I've seen. I would say caution on that particular item as fact for now until we know more.
Agreed. So the I think there's 2 points to the story that I wanted to bring up. Number one is obviously Hacking Team was a company who had I don't know if it's all their data, but a substantial amount of their data stolen, and apparently including like browser histories of some of their employees, by the way, which I thought was odd for for things to be exfiltrated. But anyway, I'm sure there's more to the story there. But we don't know exactly how this breach happened. We do know that there's a lot of people gunning for them, so it's I'm sure they eventually found a way in. The other probably more interesting part to me, and more concerning part to me, is the long-term implications of the breach, right? Because Hacking Team's business was built around professionalizing and delivering refined malware that was intended to evade detection and provide basically the ability to spy on targets. It was built for that express purpose, and apparently it did a pretty good job. There's some allegations in here or assertions that this may have been what was used to decloak some of the child pornographers using Tor, and and there's bragging about how they're able to evade certificate pinning and HSTS and intercepting Tor traffic, and and on and on and on. But now with all this out in the open, it's kind of a roadmap for any comers, right? We know that the organized crime is probably, I can guarantee you, organized crime. The people who are writing malware as a service, exploit kits and whatnot, are digging the crap out of this thing. And I think our jobs as defenders are about to get a lot harder. And as an example, one of the other story we have is that amongst this 400 gigabytes of data were 2 0 days. Early on in the a couple days ago, right? People were running through this and they were kind of poking fun at Hacky Team, saying, "Haha, they're using really old vulnerabilities in their malware." And then all of a sudden, oh my goodness, they have a Adobe Flash 0 day that impacts apparently all versions on all platforms, and they also have a privilege escalation bug in Windows 0 day, which doesn't have a patch either. And so actually earlier today, Adobe released a patch, and yesterday, in fact, kind of in an unprecedented manner, at least as I understand it, Adobe released a statement saying that this was out there without a patch, which, as far as I know, they haven't done that kind of an announcement before. So, I guess my bigger concern, it's just another concern, is we're still finding to this day new stuff out of the big pot of data that Bradley Manning released how many years ago? And I don't think it was this big, size-wise. So, who knows what the heck? This could be a fountain of horribleness for a long time to come.
I think, though, a lot of good points, and I agree with all of them. Kind of to jump off those, this is interesting to me in a couple ways, too, that we are seeing what we always suspected, that a number of companies are probably sitting on 0 days that they know about, whether they bought them off the market, they found them themselves, they traded them. There are active 0 days that are actively used and actively hidden out there in the world. And here's a good example of that. So now we've got not just governments, but now private organizations that are, in theory, not malicious, quote unquote, that are seeking a market in 0 days, which again, as a defender, makes our job a little easier, because those 0 days are not getting reported to the organizations to be resolved.
Right.
The other thing that I found really interesting about the story is how quickly these 0 days were weaponized because of what was dumped. Made it, I think I read an article that it was excellent directions were wrapped around these 0 days.
Yes.
Which, if you're like a standard organization and you've got an SLA of 30 days to patch, we saw this pop out almost within 24 hours of it being basically revealed to the world. And then the patch today, which again was probably heroic efforts on Adobe's part. And now you're going to go 30 days before you deploy that patch. When we're dealing with an exploit that is simply going to a web page.
Yeah, and it has been weaponized, and it's been included in a number of exploit kits. Probably the most significant and prolific exploit kits, in fact.
So there's other mitigations here, right, that we could talk about. Turning on click to play with Flash is a good idea, and all the main browsers can do it. A number of browsers have the ability to be more selective in when Flash can run. EMET apparently counters this particular exploit. Obviously,
does it? Okay. Good.
Well, I haven't tested that, so take that with a grain of salt. But I saw that floating around on Twitter from one of the security companies who was talking about this on one of their blogs. I could go find it. But ultimately, this is going to keep happening. Flash and Java and other things like this are going to keep getting attacked. And there's I read another report today of a number of other Flash 0 days that were detected that they haven't been able to find the exact culprit enough to be able to resolve it. They don't know what the exact vector is, but they know that it is Flash and it's a 0 day, this is really vulnerable code. So if you're relying only on patching to defend against this, you're in trouble. I I have heard that Chrome Sandbox does a good job of fighting this. The forthcoming Microsoft Edge browser's got a good sandbox for Flash and whatnot, and Firefox is working on their sandbox, so I think those will be helpful. But in the meantime, it's kind of scary. There's other technologies out there. Clearly, a number of folks ran up the flagpole that, our technology stopped this, kind of stuff. But
yep, usual players, Bromium and Vincia.
Yeah, but that's good. But is that fortunate happenstance with this particular type of vulnerability, or
Yeah, absolutely.
So, anyway, my point being, we're going to keep having these problems. We've got to find a better solution than relying on simply patching.
I agree.
The other thing I wanted to point out from my notes is, how good are we at organizations with spotting exfiltration? This is 400 gigs of data went out the door. Now, we don't know the time frame we went at it. We don't know how it was trickled out. We don't know anything about how it was transferred. But that's an interesting use case to run through your organization. Hey, if we had 400 gigs go out the door, could we spot it? Would we know?
Yeah, I was having that discussion on Twitter with Patrick Gray. And I suspect the average organization would not see it. I don't think most organizations are actually looking that closely and don't necessarily treat bandwidth as part of their security intelligence. So it is something to look at. My concern would be the amount of false positives. I mean, it's going to be really noisy. Certainly depending on if your average bandwidth usage is 10 megs and all of a sudden it goes to 50 megs for a day and a half, there's probably something going on. But I think for a lot of companies who have higher bandwidth connections, there's going to be a lot of just natural variability, and maybe there's something bigger there to look at. Maybe some of those other variations are other concerning things that you ought to be looking at too. But I just generally don't think after every one of these big data breaches, whether it was OPM or Sony or this one, there's just a litany of people saying, well, how could they not see that? How could you not notice 400 gigs or a terabyte or whatever of data leaving? And I think the answer is probably that they're not looking, and I don't think many people are.
I would agree. I know most organizations I've worked in, we don't have the capability to spot something like that.
Yeah.
And it's not just a matter of, filtering at the edge for what you're allowed to send out. There's plenty of avenues for data to get out, right? So even if you're doing good egress filtering, it's easy to get data out of your organization from the inside. There's 1,000 different ways they could do it. So that's not going to stop it. It's more a matter of some sort of anomaly detection, bandwidth profiling, something. I don't know. Honey data, honey records, things like that are getting touched that shouldn't be. There's.
Yep.
The bottom line is, and I know we're spending a lot of time on this story, is you've got to go in with the concept that the bad guys are coming after your critical data. How are you going to find out when they get it? Assume they can get to it. How are you going to know?
Yeah, that is the $1 million question for most of us. So moving on off of that story, the next one is a little bit related, and it comes to us from Security Affairs, and the title is Kin's Malware Builder Leaked on Numerous Crime Forums. So Kin's Malware Builder is it's another one of those malware as a service packages that lets you, the customer, build custom versions of Zeus VM, which are intended, look, one of the big problems we have nowadays is that no two recipients get the same version of malware, right? It's just, they're very, very often very targeted. They're recompiled or they're obfuscated individually or any number of different techniques. And what happened here is that the wrapper package, the manager, if you will, that lets you remotely manage the bots and create new customized versions of the Zeus VM Trojan was leaked. So the source is out there, yet again. Now we have another situation, just like the story we talked about, just like the concern I expressed. The attackers are becoming, at least in my view, and I think we saw this after Zeus, the Trojan source code leaked a number of years ago. We see that there's a very rapid uptake of the kind of the best practices by all of these different malware providing organizations, and and they're cherry picking the best techniques that are the most effective, and it just again makes our job a hell of a lot harder.
Yeah, it sure does. But to be expected.
No, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Just as they say, watch cornhole. So.
Ew.
Yeah, I know. Might delete that. Moving on to our next story. This one comes from ThreatPost, and I know this will drive a little bit of discussion. It is related to the CyberUL. So Mudge, apparently, who
Mudge to you, Mister.
Oh, whatever. He left Google to go form this new CyberUL company. And I guess it was at the behest of the White House, right? And as I understand it, at least, the intention is to test security products, and effectively test whether or not they. To be honest,
fair, we don't know.
Yeah, right.
Very few details put out.
We don't actually know what they're going to test for. There's been some discussion. Do the products do what they say they're going to do, or do they have intrinsic flaws, or so we don't really know exactly what they're going to do. The nomenclature of UL kind of makes one think that they're going to be performing certain kinds of testing.
So
I suppose.
Mudge put out a paper, I think back in '99.
That's right.
About his view of what a CyberUL should look like. So a lot of speculation is based upon what's in that paper. And so take all of this with a huge grain of salt, but the concept is testing and certifying security applications and security tools to make sure that they're effective and capable and, useful. My counter to that is I don't think that's the problem. I don't think the efficacy of our tools is really in question. I mean, antivirus aside. I think it has a lot more to do with how we are implementing and executing and engineering and operating those tools.
You don't think that? I mean, I can understand. I read Rob Graham's objection to it, and to be candid, I think Rob completely missed the boat on his. He seemed to think that the purpose of the CyberUL was to test the security of general software, and that I think it was backwards. It was the CyberUL is intended to check security, specifically security products, and I also don't think it's intended to be mandatory, just like UL certification isn't mandatory. But that's neither here nor there. I do think that, let's pick on DLP. Does it work or doesn't it work? Let's pick on, pick your browser virtualization technology. Does it actually work? I think there are some things that are much more clear that they work. But I guess my point is, I think there's a lot more in that antivirus, question mark bucket than might seem. Especially in the emerging technology area.
So let's say this becomes popular. Let's say this becomes, much like the Gartner Magic Quadrant. You need to be CyberUL certified. So is this going to be like the recent government, liability coverage in the event of terrorist acts sort of certification that FireEye got? and people are going to have to submit major product versions, and so every time your product ups a rev, it has to get retested. Is that going to slow down innovation and release cycles?
I mean, that is the contra to the
and that may
benefit.
That may be okay, by the way. One thing that we have seen over and over again is that rapid innovation leads to less security in general, right? I'm not saying there's a causation there, but I'm saying there's a correlation there. We've often said you could have a completely secure version of Windows if you wanted to stop adding features. So, right. I don't know. I fear the unintended consequences of something like SRBL with the very sketchy facts we have in front of us right now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see it as it develops. We'll stay abreast of it for sure. So I know we want to keep moving on. So our next story comes from thefederaltimes.com, and the title is "Contractor Breach Gave Hackers Keys to OPM Data." This is a follow-up to a couple of stories we've talked about related to the major OPM breach. This actually is a couple of weeks old. I hadn't heard about it until recently, so I wanted to cover it on the show. Apparently, there's a vendor named Keypoint Government Solutions that was that also performs. I don't know if it's overflow or what, but they perform background checks on contracts for the OPM along with a couple of other vendors. Two vendors last year, and I think we may have actually covered them on the show, were breached, including Keypoint. And at the time, I think there were 48,000. Yeah, that's right, 48,000 government employees had their information stolen. I don't think we ever really found out exactly what information was stolen, but apparently also at the same time, some credentials into OPM's network were stolen. And that's certainly bad. But a couple things come to mind is this from a vendor management standpoint or a third party management standpoint. If you have a third party that that you're kind of integrated with and they get breached, right? Number one, you should have some kind of a contractual relationship that requires them to notify you. I don't think that was necessarily a problem because in this case it was all over the news everywhere. And when they do get breached, you probably want to go and burn down the house and, as far as passwords and credentials and start over with them or, at least reset it, whatever. But apparently that didn't happen because it was, as I understand the timeline, Keypoint was breached last fall and OPM was breached this spring. So there were a number of months in between.
Yeah, that's crazy. What do you say to that other than, come on, guys?
Yeah.
But, it does allow us to kind of dig into the concept of not privileged, but, valid credential being used to come in and do something bad is a lot tougher nut to crack than somebody doing an exploit in your environment. So if they've already got a normal a normal account to come in with, that's going to look pretty legit unless you're profiling behavior and saying, wow, nobody's ever come from this IP address before with that account, or nobody really does that at 2 a.m, something like that. That's
right.
Or going two-factor.
Yeah, I was going to say, once again, two-factor would have probably helped here. But, I think between 2014 and 2015, we are certainly coming to realize the liability and risk that these vendors and counterparties who have access to your systems can pose. And we really just collectively as an industry, I think we need to get better at understanding that risk and managing it better. So, anyhow, I think that's actually the last story we had. So, anything else you wanted to cover?
No, I mean, there's a lot going on. We'll probably be back again in a couple of days for our normal time slots, so we can certainly cover it then.
Indeed. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for listening. As always, we definitely appreciate you. And one more shout out. Thank you to everyone who's donated to our Patreon campaign. That is really, really great. A reminder, you can find the show on the internet and our show notes, which include links to all the stories we've talked about, at our website, www.defensivesecurity.org. You can find the show on Twitter at DefensiveSec. You can follow Mr. Callett on Twitter at Lurg, and you can follow me on Twitter at MaliciousLink. And with that, we will talk to you again next time.
Thanks, everybody. Always appreciate you listening. Talk to you soon.
Take care.
I would taser them in their face.
Yeah, they're in Michigan right now, so it's be a really long taser cord.
That's why they have drones.
Now there's an idea. A drone mount, or a taser mounted on a drone. I like it.
I think it's a fine plan.
Seems like a great idea. Innovation right there.
This is how we come up with our next $1 million idea. Where's the VCs?
I hear you. Look out, Elon Musk. Here we come. I am waiting for Star Wars from the Empire perspective.
Seriously. Why not? Because they're just trying to enforce laws and have like a stable galaxy, and
Exactly.
some kids keep blowing up their shit.
Exactly. And wasting their money, and they're just trying to protect their citizens.
The Death Star plans were stolen by their version of Snowden.
That's true. That's very true.
Went up on Empire WikiLeaks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye-bye.